The search for the Titanic submarine has now come to a close.
The official did confirm that it was their underwater detection system that likely heard the implosion of the Titan sub.
An incredibly unforgiving environment down there on the seafloor.
Oceangate shouldn't have been doing what it was doing. I think that's pretty clear. I wish I had been more vocal about that, but I think I was unaware that they weren't certified.
Hello everyone. What happened last week shook the world. A submersible named Titan, made by Oceangate, a privately owned company that provides crewed submersibles for tourism, research and exploration, imploded a couple of hours after it started its journey to explore the wreckage of Titanic. There were 5 members in the submersible, including the CEO of the company, Stockton Rush. What followed this tragic event was a plethora of allegations, news articles and discussions about the safety standards of the submersible. However, the only facts highlighted in the case were that the submersible was not formally reviewed or approved by any third party and that the design of the submersible was still experimental. Now, because the event happened just last week, we do not completely know all the facts of the case, and therefore, the Better Company has decided to stick only to the safety standards of the submersible and stayed away from framing any biased opinions about Oceangate or the submersible out of respect for the deceased and their families. But what we want to discuss today is a very common word that is a part of each and every person's vocabulary, but they often fail to take it seriously. In fact, I just mentioned this word twice in the last minute. That word is safety. While multinational companies have imbibed safe practices and measures into their day-to-day operations, we all know that there are situations in daily life that demand going beyond the set rules and into the unknown, especially when it comes to innovation. So as business students, we need to ask ourselves, tomorrow when we go out in the world and are put in a spot to make a tough choice where the lines are blurred, where do we draw the line of safety? Watch this video till the end and I'll tell you exactly where you can draw that line. To understand this scenario better, today I am going to give 2 separate stories from our history where people crossed the line of safety and had to pay a price for it. Then we are going to carefully understand how can business students like you and me make the right choice when put in such a situation and understand where to draw a line. So, let's get started. The first is a story from 1986 about NASA space shuttle Challenger. The vehicle was originally built in 1975 and launched into space for the first time in 1983. But the launch of Challenger in 1986 was going to be historic for a couple of reasons. First reason was one of its crew members was a civilian. That's right, Krista McAuliffe, a crew member aboard Challenger, was 37-year-old school teacher from Concord High School in New Hampshire, USA. She was a part of the crew as an inspiration for the children across America. She therefore received a lot of publicity from media. NASA heavily promoted this launch by making sure that all schools across America watched the launch of Challenger live. Secondly, the then President of USA, Ronald Reagan, was also going to give a historic State of the Union address that very day. However, something different happened that day that haunts Americans and the world even today. On January 28, 1986, 73 seconds after the launch, NASA Space Shuttle Challenger blasted into pieces, taking the lives of all 7 crew members on it. A national event suddenly turned into a national tragedy. But what made the Space Shuttle Challenger blow up? Well, it turns out that there are these tiny rubber parts called O-rings with a diameter as small as 71 mm located on rocket boosters of the space shuttle. 71 mm. That's approximately the diameter of a tennis ball. But these rubber O-rings are responsible to prevent hot gases to escape through the rocket boosters and onto the other parts of the space shuttle. However, a very important shortcoming of these rubber O-rings was that they lost their elasticity in extremely low temperatures. Which means, when it was very cold, they failed to expand to its full capacity and therefore couldn't provide the shielding to the hot gases in rocket boosters. Now the O-rings had failed to operate properly below 53 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 11 degrees Celsius. Which means if external temperatures were even remotely close to this temperature, then the flight shouldn't have taken off, right? Well, on January 28, 1986, the day Space Shuttle Challenger left for its final flight, the external temperature was a freezing 31 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 0 degrees Celsius. The O-rings lost their elasticity shortly during the first few seconds of the launch due to freezing temperatures. This let the heated gases escape from the rocket boosters, igniting the entire space shuttle. Okay, so this gives us an interesting question. How did hundreds of great scientists, highly proficient engineers, and their subsequent managers working at NASA go so wrong? How did they not take into account this obvious scenario and delay the flight? Or did they probably choose to overlook it? Well, you can go ahead and Google all these questions to find out interesting theories, which may or may not be true. This tragedy can be assigned to one critical factor: unsafe decisions. We will come back to this topic in a bit. Now, people from India watching this video might have heard of the Bhopal gas tragedy. But what caused this tragedy in the first place? To tell you very briefly, Union Carbide Corporation, an American company, had invested in India to form a subsidiary called Union Carbide India Limited, or UCIL for short. Now, UCIL was a pesticide manufacturing plant that produced an insecticide, carbaryl, a man-made pesticide which is harmful to insects and therefore used by a lot of farmers and for general agricultural practices. Now, there were more than a few methods to manufacture this pesticide carbaryl, but the easiest and a rather dangerous method was using an extremely toxic chemical called methyl isocyanate, MIC. Now, this MIC was extremely dangerous to human beings if exposed to a lot of it in a very short time. Fair, but as long as the process to making this carbaryl via MIC was safe and well maintained, there was nothing to worry about, right? Well, but it wasn't. It turns out there was a lot of repeated slack when it came to maintaining this UCIL plant in Bhopal. Now, as mentioned in the case study by Texas A&M University, primary existing safety systems at the Bhopal MIC plant were the scrubber, water spraying system, and flare, all of which were non-functioning during the time of the leak. Now, these scrubbers and water spraying systems were supposed to keep these pipes clean. The flare tower, remember the vertical installations that you often see in manufacturing plants? Well, they are used to burn off waste and contaminated products at a height to not pollute the surroundings. Now, this flare tower was also under maintenance at the UCIL plant when this tragedy occurred. Furthermore, no safety protocols were in place that could be followed in case of such a huge disaster. And let me remind you, this did not happen at UCIL for the first time. There were multiple hazards that happened in the previous 5 years as well. But this America-based company did not take any serious steps and avoided it, including the warnings by Carbide's own safety auditors citing the possibility of a major toxic release were ignored. Now, if you want to know more about the story of Bhopal gas tragedy, you can further read this book, The Bhopal Saga, by Ingrid Eckermann, that discusses the conflicting stance of Union Carbide Corporation on the moral responsibility of the tragedy. But for the facts of this video, who do we blame for this incident? UCC the company? The CEO? Sure, by law we have to. But again, the decisions taken during the span before the Bhopal gas tragedy can be assigned to one critical factor. That is a series of unsafe decisions. Okay, but what do we do to prevent such occurrences today, tomorrow, and in the future? Now that we discussed the story of NASA's Challenger disaster and India's Bhopal gas tragedy, and keeping in mind the latest implosion of Oceangate's Titan submersible, what are the similarities? Let us highlight the nature of these similarities on one screen. First, engineers warned not to fly the Challenger one night ago. Now, while it may seem impossible to believe, there was actually a meeting between the engineers and shuttle managers where the engineers highlighted multiple times about the severity of flying the space shuttle in an untested condition. But even after such multiple warnings, the higher authorities went ahead and did it anyway. Why? Second, UCC ignored safety protocols for an extended period. As I told you, even their own auditors warned them about a potential catastrophe, yet they conveniently chose to ignore it. Why? And from the facts so far in the case of Oceangate submersible Titan, the Titan submersible was not certified. It turns out that 5 years ago, in 2018, several concerns were raised about the innovative mechanism of Titan. it was highlighted that while the company claims that submersible would meet or exceed the safety standards of a risk assessment, the company had no plans to have the craft formally certified by any other agency. Therefore, there was no official verification that the submersible was actually safe to go underwater, let alone carry tourists in it. Again, why? Now, as business students, when you are placed in a situation where you have to decide between innovation or getting the job done in due time, trying to follow the protocols of safety only as much as possible, when is it that you say that we are not going forward? When do we stop whatever we are doing, or even if it means that the job getting delayed, or probably call it off? Where is it that we draw the line? You draw the line when you think that you have misplaced priorities. I'll repeat myself. You draw the line when you think that you have misplaced priorities. To understand this better, let us go back to our previous topic of similarities in disasters. Engineers warned not to fly the Challenger one night ago. It's not like the managers who decided to launch the flight wanted it to burst out into pieces, but as decision makers, they misplaced their priorities from safety of the crew members to the cost of delaying the launch. Now let's see the second example. UCC ignored the safety protocols for an extended period. It's not like the ones in authority wanted a potential catastrophe. But since the pesticide they were making had declined interest in the market, they put budget cuts in the UCIL plant. These budget cuts were manpower, trained specialists, and members who would exercise safety protocols. Again, the company misplaced their priorities from the safety of the workers to the cost of investment in replenishing these safe practices. And lastly, the Titan submersible was not certified. By any means, the company Oceangate did not intend the horrific end of Titan. But the company that started for innovative exploration and underwater tourism for the people lost sight of this in priority. The company's CEO wrote in one of the responses on the company's blog post, bringing an outside entity up to speed on every innovation before it is put into real-world testing is an anathema to rapid innovation. The priority was comfortably shifted from the people to companies' innovation. Every single time when companies have moved from their fundamental priority, that is the people, onto the other variables such as cost or rapid innovation, it has become a recipe for disaster. So the next time when you are placed in a business environment and the choice to make a decision is in your hands and you do not know where to draw the line of safety, think of what is the priority, and that is where you draw the line. Thank you so much for listening to this case study. If you like this video, please press the like button and tell me your thoughts in the comments. Also share the video with your friends and subscribe here for more such interesting business case studies. Take care, stay safe, goodbye.